No, but you'll want support, right? You don't want people to be like, no, that's what you're going to figure out. Up to you. Don't find.
Good evening. We're going to give it just a minute. Okay. I haven't gotten any notice from Commissioner Shapiro as to whether he's coming or not. So we will, but we have a quorum. So we will launch the meeting and get started with our public safety update. So Commissioner Jake Falaskini, the chair of the APC and Public Safety Committee, joined with Commissioner Peter Wood from 1C03. I'm from 1C07. It is 7:02 p.m. on Wednesday, October 11th, and I'm calling to order the meeting of ANC 1C's Public Safety and ABC Committee meeting. The first item on the agenda, before we move to that, actually, Commissioner Wood, we received a placard yesterday for the renewal of a alcoholic beverage license. It's a retail Class B. There are no additions or modifications being sought. It's simply a renewal. In my opinion, it's best to add those to the agenda in a timely manner so that the neighborhood can consider them as quickly as possible in case it needs to intervene in any way in these. And so I would move that we add that one to the agenda for this evening so it can be considered tonight as well.
Yeah, second.
Cool. In favor? All right, so I will officially update the agenda right now. And now that's on the agenda. With that, let's move on to our public safety update. I see that Jeffrey Jones is in the audience. Can we please promote him to be a speaker? Hey there, how are you?
Sure, how are you?
Good. You broke up there a little bit, but I think we've got you now.
All right. Can you hear me? Can everyone see me?
Yep, we got you.
All right, perfect. All right, I hope everyone is doing well. Overall, for the last 30 days, our violent crime totals dropped. We had 8 offenses last 30 days, and we now have 7. So that's an overall 12% drop. Our property numbers, unfortunately, those increased. We had a total of 52 offenses, and this 30 days, we had 62, which constitutes a 19% increase. So the property crimes, those are being led by our burglary numbers. We had 6 burglaries compared to 3 during the last 30 days. But I do have some good news regarding some of these burglaries. The burglary of the Up and Smoke establishment at 2503 Champlain, we did make an arrest for that burglary. Additionally, the burglary of the Duplex Diner that happened on the 12th, the suspect was arrested for that. So the detectives are still trying to work with evidence and trying to see if we could tie them to any other burglaries that are happening. 1700 block of Columbia Road, historically, that block is just absolutely crushing us with the overnight burglaries. I have sent out more officers. I'm trying to get my hands on some plainclothes officers. Unfortunately, with our little blue lights, that's a big beacon like, hey, we're coming. So if there are any bad guys in the area, they immediately flee before we have any chance to be able to get them. So I am working on getting some plainclothes and unmarked vehicle assets to help combat the burglary problem. In terms of the robberies, like I said, we are down 12%. I want to kind of touch on a few of them. Several of these robberies that we had in PSA 303 are part of a larger pattern. When I say a robbery pattern, that means not just one offense happened by the same offenders. They committed multiple offenses throughout the district. The same suspects on the 3rd of October, they committed an armed robbery at 1804 Adams Mill and 1724 California Street. Detectives do have some active leads. They have a few vehicles that they're looking out, and they have a nickname of an individual that they are looking into now. On the 12th of September at 01:58 hours in the morning, the 7-Eleven at 1900 Wyoming Avenue was robbed. No good leads. We do have good video, so there is a bolo out for that suspect. We had another robbery at 1943 Calvert Street. That one is another pattern that was involved in several offenses up in the 4th District. We had an armed carjacking at 2812 Adams Mill Road. This one definitely drew a lot of attention from the constituents, rightfully so, because the suspects and the offenders, they do look to be very, very young. And it's very disconcerting. It's a very scary thought to know that guns are in the hands of these very, very young children. Like I said, we've deployed as many resources as we can, and I don't know if it's been discussed with everyone before, but there is a special task force that has been put together for the past several years that focuses on armed carjackings and pattern robbery. So they have the best of the best assigned to these types of crimes. Brand new, on the 10th at 04:30 in the morning, the DC Pizza and Kebab at 2005 18th Street, that was robbed. So that's brand new, just happened the other day. I was actually on the phone with the officer assigned to that area. She was in the 2100 block as soon as this happened. So her response time was 35 seconds. So it's not like we're not there. It's just the criminals are one step ahead. So the one good positive underlining thing with a lot of these crimes, we have great video. The detectives have gone out. They have some Ring cameras, and these establishments, most of them have very, very great video. So, we have a couple bolos that are out there. That appears to be all that I have now. I can open it up for any questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you, Lieutenant. We really appreciate it. Do you have any updates on the triple homicide from up on Euclid Street from a couple of months ago?
Not at this moment. I did speak to the lieutenant in charge of the homicide branch, and they few leads, but nothing that has risen to the point of establishing probable cause for a suspect yet. So that one is they're still working on it.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question from the audience that I'll just ask aloud, which is whether or not MPD is still dedicating the same amount of resources or close to the same amount of resources to Unity Park as you were approximately 30 days ago?
To the best of our ability. A lot of those resources that we brought in from outside of the 3rd district, they are being utilized in other hotspots, other areas within the 3rd district. So like, for example, our violent crime suppression division, they brought in some plainclothes assets to help focus on the drug and narcotics issues. So which they were successful in the 3-day operation that I put on last month, but they have since moved to another area in the district. So outside of 3D, they have, those resources have moved, but we still have officers that, during all 3 shifts show special attention to those areas.
Thank you. I've definitely noticed it starting to creep back a little bit to where it was before. I will note for the audience that we now have funding to begin the resurfacing of Unity Park. And so there will be a time period here really soon that should start within the next few months. And there will be a time here really soon where we'll at least be able to close that park down and resurface it while that's happening. I think that gives us an opportunity for a little bit of a reset there. So I'll work with you on that, Lieutenant Jones.
Sure.
Peter Wood, you've had your hand up.
All right, so I appreciate you mentioned patterns a lot, and I think that's really important for a few reasons, especially when, with limited resources and it's hard to, within the confines of rules, try to intervene people that are outside of those confines. So I guess a couple questions. One, like you mentioned property crimes. That's something that I think even in the local press, it's been kind of recently covered that Adams Morgan has a pretty high year-over-year rate of increase of property crimes, especially like carjackings. Is there something unique about Adams Morgan? Is that happening in multiple neighborhoods? Just from your perspective, is there something that on a neighborhood basis that there is an abnormal pattern going on that involves the Adams Morgan community?
It's very hard to say, but one pattern that I personally have seen up in PSA 302, which is like the 14th and Columbia Road area, that has been a frequent flyer in terms of like high violent crime. And if I recall correctly, a few of these patterns, the patterns did not start in PSA 303. I think they're starting elsewhere. And then as they go to egress away from their first crime, it's a crime of opportunity. They see someone walking or they see a person in traffic. These bad guys will do their thing. They will rob this unsuspecting person on their way out to wherever they're going. So I don't think it's starting at 303. I think it's just sort of a pass through.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you say that, it's like the first registered offenses, or at least accusations of offenses, you're saying that that happens elsewhere, and then
Yes,
people that are accused of those things don't go back to the same locations, they move elsewhere or disappear.
and
Right.
a lot of these offenders, they are in stolen cars, so they are always on the move. And it you can't predict this stuff. It's very, very tough. Like, a lot of the things the police department does is reactive. Like, as soon as a crime happens, what do we as a police department do? We shift resources that try to deter and defer the crime from happening in this area. It is such a difficult thing to try to prevent it. And the prevention of crime, it definitely starts with just personal awareness and the cameras, and just trying to always just always be aware of your surroundings. And it's very unfortunate to have to say that, but that's just how I live, even before I became the police. You cannot prevent crime from happening.
And just one other question kind of related to that exact point. Still talking about patterns, and I know this is a hard question and people spend careers studying it, so I don't expect too deep of a response, but are there any patterns that you're being able to identify, and just like motives of why this kind of yearish long increase of violent and property crimes has been going on? Like, is there any sort of common pin that you're able as a department to kind of say, yeah, this is why? Because especially when we compare it to other cities, the story has recently been that DC is kind of an anomaly, that most major cities are seeing trends in different directions than ours. And I'm just wondering if you've been able to get any hope on like figuring out why that is, because if that's an important question to answer.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question to answer, but just based on what I've personally seen, the crimes, the robberies, they definitely increase around the holiday seasons because there's more people out, there's more money floating around. Like, the establishments, they have, more items available. So it's, a lot of these crimes also happen overnights, where, especially along the 18th Street corridor, like, a lot of people park along Columbia Road, Euclid, Champlain, and it's just, there's a lot more people. There's, I hate to phrase it like this, but it's just, from the criminal's perspective, there's a lot more targets, and anybody could be a target anytime. I absolutely hate saying that, but it's just these, especially around like the club zone, because I also run the club zone as well. That's why we have so many crimes that happen there, because there's so many people. Could you factor in alcohol, an inebriation factor, possibly? There's so many different factors that can go into trying to identify exactly what these patterns are, but it's hard to narrow it down to just one thing.
Okay, that's what I expect. It's a hard thing. I get that. It's just constantly thinking, because I get constituents especially, asking all the time, like, what's going on? Why is it so much more scary to go out to my car, especially with carjackings? I think that's the thing where it's like, something's going on and it's hard to pin. It might be multiple things, but I just want to make sure that you're aware that we're thinking of it, and I know you are too.
Absolutely. And if I ever hear anything, like if there's something specific to this community that, they have found that that's the criminal's target, absolutely, I could share it.
Thank you.
Let's open it up for community questions. Any participants have any questions? If so, just raise your hand. Okay, I just want to thank you, Lieutenant Jones, for the really quick response after the carjacking, when Commissioner Stevens sent you and others email about it. You guys were on it and just so responsive, and we really appreciate it. So thank you.
Absolutely, no problem.
Cool. Have a great evening. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep. All right. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have 4 liquor license renewals that have come up. So these are normally really simple when the ANC handles them. We tend not to intervene unless a member of the community specifically has, really urgent concerns about why a renewal shouldn't happen, which is different, obviously, than the posture that we take when a new liquor license is being sought. Because in those circumstances, we often need to work with the owners in order to hammer out a community agreement with them and make sure they kind of understand the way that the community engages with liquor selling establishments. But that already exists with renewals. Although we don't normally put settlement agreements in place with grocery stores, which is what's up tonight. So just with that context in place, we have 4 renewals that are up this month. The first is Harris Teeter, which is seeking a full service grocery license renewal with no changes. The second is Streets Market, which is seeking a full service grocery license renewal with no changes. The link is in the agenda to each of the placard notices, so folks can see them there. The third is the Casa Labrato, which is a retail grocery license renewal with no changes. And then the last is Rioja Market, which is seeking a retail license renewal with no changes. I personally have not had any negative interactions with any of these businesses other than that super loud freezer on the side of Harris Teeter that like just makes tons of noise, and like the trucks that back in and kind of take up a bunch of 17th Street while they're doing it. And the really gross liquid that's also kind of pouring out of the side of Harris Teeter sometimes, like near that freezer, going out along 17th Street. But other than that, I have not had any negative experiences with any of these businesses, or noticed or heard any problems from any of my constituents about their liquor sales or any kind of impropriety with the way that they're selling liquor in their establishments. I open it to you, up to you, Commissioner Wood, if you have anything, and then we'd be happy to take public comment on this too.
Yeah, I mean, similar thoughts. The ones Streets and La Rioja are both in my SMD. They've been pretty good neighbors. Streets has been excellent in terms of a lot of different things. So I've seen no reason to get involved. They should, I hope they can conduct business as usual here going forward. Harris Teeter though, I know several people that live immediately next to Harris Teeter. I think on both sides of the street. I've had people come to me specifically asking, and even considering to run for ANC commissioner, specifically because they want to get Harris Teeter's act together on that side of their building. Like it's gotten to that point where it's bothered people enough. I think it might be worth for us to have this as a point of discussion at our November meeting, just because it's a good opportunity for us to invite someone to represent Harris Teeter and say, look, you're capable of making it a lot better for the neighbors right there. We're not going to ask you to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in establishing a new delivery system or something, but be cleaner and a bit more courteous. And I think this is probably a good moment. It's probably an uphill battle. They probably realize that they're going to get there. Like they're a huge grocery chain, so they're probably going to get what they want. But it doesn't mean that we can't at least in good faith try to get them to be a little bit better neighbor. Because for several months have heard this, actually for longer than that, for a couple of years, have heard people to some degree or another complain about that specifically. So kind of was waiting for this day, because it's probably the one opportunity we get to actually like do this with a little bit of force behind our bark.
Yeah, totally. Pretty much our only opportunity. Yeah, I agree with that notion. Let's open it up for public comment, and then maybe we can come back to this one as an action item out of this.
See.
I don't know what happened to the Calorama market. I assume that during the pandemic, they just kind of temporarily closed down. I'm not sure what's going on. It's a good question though. They had great breakfast sandwiches. All right, I'll give it 30 through 10 more seconds if anyone wants to make any public comments about any of these establishments. All right, Commissioner Wood, I defer to you on what you want to move with this.
And we can maybe shape it together. I guess my idea would be we move to consider protesting the liquor license at our November meeting, and we can invite someone from Harris Teeter, see if they show up. I mean, I hope, of course, as every case, we hope to resolve things without a protest being necessary. But if it comes to it, we can at least discuss that in a November meeting and see what the commission feels as a whole. So I'll move that.
I second that. I have been frustrated enough with the way in which they engage with the 17th Street neighbors and just like lack of hygiene kind of coming out of that side of the building, and also extremely high levels of noise. To the point where I wondered like why neighbors over there don't kind of reach out to me more to complain. So it's interesting you've heard more of that. I have not heard a lot.
I just happen to have a bunch of friends that live there, so they were like, "Hey, please!" And one of them was a relatively. They moved across the neighborhood to that street, and they're like, "I just realized that this is an issue, and I like my place of living, except for that specific issue, and I really want it resolved." And people know neighbors, and people word gets around, so it's definitely not a unique perspective.
Cool. Well, I agree with your motion then. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright.
So that carries. Otherwise, I propose that we take no action on the other 3 liquor license renewals, which are Streets Market, Casa Librato, and Rioja Market. Agreed?
I think that sounds great.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. That's everything on our agenda for tonight. It's 7:23 and I'm calling this committee meeting to a close.